Well, we're at the dawn of a brand new console launch, so I figure it's about time we travel back to the year 2013 to check out the first party launch titles for the Xbox One. Let's check them out. Yes! Oh, sorry. You caught me in the middle of an epic gaming session. You see, I've got my Xbox Day 1 controller here, and I'm playing the brand new Xbox One, the all-in-one entertainment system, and some of the awesome first-party games that have launched for the system. I mean, there's only 4, but hey, 4's better than 1, right? Definitely. So, of course, as you know, we're not in the year 2013, we're in the year 2020. The worst of the years, by far. And we are about to reach the dawn of a brand new gaming generation, which means I feel it's about time we look back on the one that we've been enjoying for the past 7 years. Now, when the Xbox One launched back in 2013, we did a pretty big deal over it. Of course, I did a massive Xbox One launch special, played some games, showed off some content. It was a lot of fun. But I feel it's about time we go back and try some of Microsoft's first-party titles today and see if they hold up as well as they did back in 2013. Now, I have a grand total of 4 Xbox One launch titles that I'm going to be playing. These are all Microsoft-published launch titles. So I'm not playing every single launch title, just the Microsoft published ones. And I feel it's only fitting that we start with a reboot of a classic franchise that came back on the Xbox One.
Aria knows that humanity's future is grim. There are battles on the horizon that have never before been fought, and foes against whom humanity has not been tested. Fighting these battles is the purpose for which Ultratech was created, and Project Stalker is Aria's pursuit of creating the perfect hunter. Constructed using Ultratech gene splicing, the Stalkers have the instincts and brutality of a raptor, the obedience of a human soldier, and synthetic Ultratech genes. When they were hatched, Aria pitted them against the Fulgors. The Stalkers were outnumbered, but they hunted their prey as a pack, dissecting the Fulgors one by one. Aria named the leader of the pack, the most ruthless stalker, Riptor.
Killer Instinct is a fighting game reboot of the classic Rare fighting game from the SNES and arcades. This one was made specifically for the Xbox One. It was designed as kind of a games as service, but mixed with a classic 2D style fighting game. Of course, a lot of your favorite characters from the Killer Instinct series are back, but they also included some guest characters, which I'll talk about in a bit. So if you haven't played Killer Instinct, essentially it's a very combo-driven, fast-paced action fighting game. A lot of it is about stringing together very quick, very snappy moves and trying to chain your opponent to death. The result is basically you press a lot of buttons and hope you do enough to keep your chain going as quick as possible. Now, I freely admit I am no fighting game master. Really, the only one that I'm decent at is Calibur, and that one doesn't require nearly as many fast button presses as a game like Killer Instinct does. But I will say I had a lot of fun with this game. The controls are snappy, the characters are interesting. I mean, come on. You have a werewolf and a velociraptor fighting right here. Why would you not be happy with that? And it's pretty cool. It's a really fun game. What was interesting about it is it started off as basically a free-to-play game. You could download the game, and one rotating character that you can play with, or you can buy characters piecemeal. You also had the option to just buy everything in a single package, which is of course what I opted to do back in the launch. Now, after the game originally came out, they did 2 additional seasons, and these seasons added some additional characters to the game, including some characters from other Microsoft franchises. So, if you ever wanted to see the Arbiter from Halo 2 square off against General Rom from Gears of War, well, now you can on Killer Instinct. You also have the option to see Rash, one of the Battletoads, fight against who knows what kind of abomination. Overall, Killer Instinct is a really fun game that actually holds up pretty well compared to some of the other Xbox One launch titles. Graphics are solid. It has that kind of overly glossy look that games early in this generation had, but it's responsive and still quite a bit of fun, and definitely a showstopper. So I definitely say this was one of the stronger Xbox One launch titles. So that's Killer Instinct, and honestly, it was one of the first games I was able to play on the Xbox One. I got to go to a Xbox One preview event at the Microsoft store at the Mall of Millennia back in 2013, where we got to try both that and our next game before the system even launched. So what better way to show off the visuals and power of a brand new system besides a fighting game reboot than with a racing game? And not just any racing game. Forza Motorsport 5. Aw yeah, it's racing time, baby! Forza Motorsport 5 is of course the 5th entry in the long-running Forza Motorsport realistic driving sim series from Microsoft and Turn 10 Studios. Of course, if you're going to show off the graphical capabilities of a new console, doing a realistic racing game is probably your best bet. And Forza Motorsport 5 does not disappoint. It definitely showcases some of the visual power and majesty that the Xbox One was capable of, producing higher textures, beautiful and smooth frame rates, as well as some really impressive visual flares that show off what next generation gaming really can be. Now, of course, as a racing game, Forza Motorsport 5 controls and looks just like you want it to. It's very responsive, the racing is very smooth, it controls well, but one of the most impressive things that's kind of nuanced about this game is how it utilizes the rumble feature in the Xbox One controller. Now, of course, the Xbox One controller includes haptic feedback among other special features, and that haptic feedback is really shown off here. When you make turns or run over rough surfaces, the controller vibrates and handles a little bit differently than it would when you're normally just racing on concrete. This really adds to the realism and immersiveness of the game. You also have the option to race against your friends' drivatars, which are essentially AI of your friends' replays whenever they race on a certain track. It's a fun little touch that kind of allows you to do an online rivalry with your friends even if you're not racing online. Overall, Forza Motorsport 5 is definitely a showcase game for the Xbox One, and it really did a good job of not only utilizing the controller features, but also showing off what the system can do. Very strong entry. So with Forza Motorsport 5, they did have a Day 1 edition of this game, and originally that's what I was going to get, but they also came out with a limited edition of this game. It was the only one that came with the limited edition, so of course I picked that up. So here is the Forza Motorsport 5 limited edition launch release. It comes with, of course, a whole bunch of exclusive content that was only available in this version. The coolest thing is it comes in a nice steelbook case, and then of course inside you have the game itself. Now, as a showstopper, I have to say it looked pretty darn good as a game that really showed off the capabilities of the Xbox One, especially the adaptive triggers. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty solid game. So the next one we're going to take a look at is a game that honestly I was the most excited for going into the launch of the Xbox One because it looked very different than pretty much anything else we played before. And that is Rise, Son of Rome. that doesn't get you hyped for a new game, I don't know what will. Rise Son of Rome was designed to be an action game that really showed off the capabilities of the Xbox One at launch. And it does a decent enough job of doing that. Sure, the graphics may not have held up quite as well today as they did back in 2013, but at the time, this was pretty mind-blowing. So many actions and characters going on screen at once, and all kinds of explosions and smoke effects and combat, and there's a lot going on here. And it does a good job of kind of being a game that shows off the capabilities and potential of an next-gen console, as well as being a kind of immersive cinematic adventure. Now, one thing I will say that did not hold up as well as I distinctly remember it is the game's combat. Rise Son of Rome uses basically a combination of a hack-and-slash system combined with quick-time events. Now, the quick-time events are done in an interesting way. Essentially, they're used to be able to complete execution-style combos against opposing enemies. And as a look concept, it looks pretty cool. The gameplay is pretty smooth, and when you're doing your regular hacking and slashing it's pretty responsive. The problem is when you're in the middle of an action scene with tons of enemies on screen, it kind of slows to a crawl when all of a sudden your enemy who you're attacking slows down and you have to press a colored button that matches the same color as your controller buttons to perform execution moves. Yes, this looks cool, but it's not exactly the most practical or fun when it comes to combat. I think it would be much better for them to have done a just regular hack and slash system with maybe some specific button press combos to perform executions rather than doing this slow-mo system. But at the time, it was not bad. I actually completed this game back when it came out and had a good time with it. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it could have been a lot better, which is probably the reason why we never saw a sequel or any kind of follow-up to this game whatsoever. Another interesting thing that this game did include is Kinect functionality, which allows you to use the microphone in your Kinect sensor to yell out commands to your army, including in the siege moment where you can yell fire and your AI teammates will fire a barrage of arrows against a horde coming your way. It's an interesting way to implement Kinect, and I think it's a pretty solid choice. But again, if you don't have Kinect or don't want to use it, it's a little cumbersome, especially if you don't want to use the voice commands. You have to hold down one of the shoulder buttons to activate this command, and it's pretty slow. Now, the action boss fights that are in the game are something a little bit different from what you're used to. It's the same style combat, but instead of it being just a simple hack, press button, slow motion, you actually have to dodge attacks, dodge power attacks. It's a little more complicated, but a lot of the same stuff. The truth is, I wanted Rise to be better. Looking back at it, I think it was fun at the time, but it definitely doesn't hold up compared to modern day action games. And if they ever were to do a sequel, I could see them taking this premise and doing a lot more with it. It was a cool idea, and it could be a lot better. So, we'll see if we ever get a sequel to Rise. I'm not counting on it, but you never know.
Now, like I mentioned with the Forza clip, both of these next titles had day one editions. They had a little flag down the bottom that said it was a day one launch. It also had a cool, like, chrome silver background. So you definitely knew that you had a day one edition of the game. And each copy had a code that gave you exclusive content that was only available for the day one edition. So of course I had all of those because I was really big in the Xbox One. So here's Rise Son of Rome's copy. Got that chrome. It looks really, really nice. And of course the back of the game has all the information about it. It's time to play our last game. Now, this is, of course, a series that became very popular on the Xbox 360. It made a lot of sense for the third installment to be a Xbox One launch title that was published by Microsoft, even though it's a game that belongs to a different publisher. But hey, who doesn't want to mow down a bunch of zombies, right? It's time for Dead Rising 3.
Just keep walking. Don't turn your head.
Dead Rising 3, of course, is a sequel to Dead Rising and Dead Rising 2, two games that graced the Xbox 360 in partnership with Capcom that really showed off the capabilities of that system. Of course, one of the biggest things of the original Dead Rising was just the sheer amount of zombies available on screen, and the fact that you could pick up pretty much anything in a giant mall setting and use it to attack the undead. Dead Rising 3 decides to take a little less comical approach to the zombie genre and focus more on a serious kind of character-driven story, starring Nick Ramos, a former military man turned mechanic who now must fight to save his friends and people he meets along the way from the zombie hordes in a zombie-infested California. So, it's noticeably darker and definitely has some interesting quirks to it, unlike the original. One thing that I noticed very early on is that there was this gate that I couldn't actually open unless I had a specific type of weapon, which was really annoying. I tried to hit it with a 2x4, it didn't open, so I ended up having to kick it open. Weird quirk that I discovered along the way, but you know, sometimes that happens. I will say, this game does a good job of being very cinematic and exciting. There's all kinds of stuff going on, from character drama to all kinds of enemies and weapons you can pick up. The inventory system is a little wonky, that's for sure. Now granted, I haven't played this game in a very long time, so I might have just not been used to it, but it is pretty fun to grab a random item you find on the ground and just start hacking away at the undead. It makes things pretty exciting. It gets really good when you're able to start making combo weapons. You're able to take things like, oh, I don't know, a buzzsaw and a sledgehammer and make a weapon of destruction and just wipe out a ton of zombies along the way. It's also fun when you get behind the wheel of a vehicle and you can just start mowing down tons and tons and tons of zombies. That definitely adds to the charm of the Dead Rising franchise. I do think this game does a good job of showing off the capabilities of the Xbox One, especially in terms of processing power, considering how many zombies could be on screen. You thought the number on the 360 was a lot. Wait till you see how many can be on screen on the Xbox One. It's pretty nuts. Overall, the game holds up decently well. It's fun. The story is interesting. Yes, you can still dress up in crazy costumes and just have fun mowing down tons and tons of zombies. Yeah, it's a little more bleak, but hey, it's Dead Rising. And if you enjoyed the older ones, you'll definitely enjoy this one. So, I give them credit. I think it's a solid game, and honestly, still worth playing even today. So, of course, here is the box for the Day 1 edition of Dead Rising 3. It looks just like all the other Day 1 editions. It's got that chrome. Pretty awesome. I still have the codes, too. There's the code for Dead Rising 3's exclusive content. What was it for this one? I'm curious. Doesn't say. Just says that there's a exclusive code. So, pretty cool. So yeah, that was me playing all 4 of the Microsoft-published Day 1 Xbox One games. Now, unfortunately, with the Xbox Series X, there's really not much in terms of Microsoft-published first-party games. Their main game that they were hoping to launch was Halo Infinite, and that got delayed. So other than that, they're pretty much relying on their back catalog and on backwards compatibility to really keep this thing going. But that's not to say that there's not an occasional first-party game. Obviously, a bunch of games have been upgraded for the Xbox Series X. And then you do have games like Gears Tactics, which are finally launching on console. Now, granted, that game's been on PC for about a year. But it's on console, and it's running natively on the Xbox Series X. So, it's not like there's no Microsoft titles. There's just not many. Unlike the Xbox One, where there was 4. So there you go. That is going to do it for our little
look back in time for 4 of the Xbox One Microsoft published launch titles. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. New videos on this channel go live every day at noon Eastern time, so hit the subscribe button, click that notification bell, that way you know when new videos drop. I still don't know yet what the dealio is with my Xbox Series X. I'm hoping I'll have it in the next couple days, but who knows? Whenever I end up getting it, I will do a hands-on, show off the system, show off its capabilities, all that good stuff, but might not be a launch. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of the Next Gen Launch Special. Bye-bye.